What happened?
Okay, hello everyone. We are drawing hands today. So our last art class for now, we're going to do hands. So this is the general skeleton of a hand. And if you've never drawn hands before, it can feel very nerve-wracking. I know when I first drew my first hand, I was like, no. So when you start drawing a hand, it's very important to kind of feel the bone structure. Like you don't have to know, the parts of the hand. Like you don't have to know the skeleton word for word, but just have a general understanding of what is going on inside. So if we take a look at this hand, we have bones, obviously. So down here we have the bones that can't really move. Like when we spread our hands out, they're not like flying all over the place. Only our fingers are. So these are the metacarpals. They're just bones that are on the inside, and they take up roughly half of your whole hand. See how it's almost the same? For different people, this is different. So some might have a longer metacarpal, or they might have longer, these are what are called phalanges. So these are our fingers. So you can think of it as split in half, like you're waving. Okay, and then of course, wrapping around those bones are our muscles. There are actually no muscles in our fingers at all. No muscles, only down here. So that's this fleshy part, like the muscles here. We don't have any muscles in our fingers. It's all skin and fat up there. So what moves them are our tendons. So here we have a little bit more built up structure of our hand. Basically, it's just all the flesh wrapping around these 5 sticks. And you can kind of think of the skin as like a web, especially between the fingers. You can see how it becomes a web. You can see the bone, but the web is connecting that in between. There's nothing in here. A couple more pictures. Okay, we are going to start with a relaxed pose. Let me put the picture on here. So in the meantime, you can go get your supplies. So paper, pencil, and eraser. Okay, so we're going to begin with a relaxed hand. Let's do this middle one here. It's pretty standard. You have the front view of all the fingers, rather the back view. So you can take a picture, but I'll keep this on here. This is how I begin. First, I pay attention to how long each section is, right? So when we looked at the skeleton, it was about half. You can split the whole hand into this part, and then now the fingers. In this case, the fingers are a little bit longer. They are a little bit longer than this area. Okay, So I'm going to start first looking for the biggest shapes. Same with drawing anything else, you're just going to look for the biggest shapes first. And for me, I see this whole shape. It could be a square, it could be a circle to you, or maybe some sort of a pentagon. But you can just draw a rough circle just for this area. Because it is quite round. And then afterwards, I'm going to look for the joints. So that's where different parts meet. So obviously we have the knuckles, more knuckles, and then more knuckles. For the fingers, these 4 fingers, you'll see 3 of these bumps. You can even use your own hand as a reference. You have 1 row of knuckles, and then these knuckles, and then these very small ones near your fingernails. So 3 rows. I'm going to draw in and sketch in the first row of knuckles. So starting around here, I'm just going to draw a little circle showing this knuckle. And if you want to go for accuracy, just take your time and really spend some time looking at how big these knuckles, how wide or how tall they are compared to the rest of the hand. Because if you divide this length evenly, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, notice how if I divided it evenly, it wouldn't match up with the spacing of the knuckles. That means some of these bones are bigger than the other ones. So take your time and just look closely at what bones are bigger. And some of them might actually be a little bit taller or lower than others. So my next one will be about here. And I'm kind of spacing them out. You see, I leave a little bit of space in between. Because anatomically, if I had both my knuckles squished together, you wouldn't be able to move them. You would have a lot of friction. And then this one, I'd follow the curve of the shape I just drew. This bigger circle. I'm just putting these tiny little circles on the edge. Boop, boop. And then the next one, it's a little bit lower. So if you can see. Actually, I think it's on the same height. And then finally, one of the knuckles on the far right. And the one thing you might also be noticing is how the circles are getting more like ovals as I get to the edge. Why? Because the hand is round. I'm just showing you, don't draw this, but this is an arrow to show you that there is flesh. The hand is round. It's not flat. Like if you flipped it around, you wouldn't be able to see this going on, right? If it were flat, this finger would block all the other fingers from your sight. But because the hand is round and some of these fingers are higher up, right? Some of these fingers are higher up. That's why when they get further out, I make them thinner to show that they are getting further away and also turning away from us. Okay, and then next I'm going to landmark. So landmarking is just where you make a little mark showing yourself where the end of the hand is, or where you think the hand or where the fingers end. So this is the furthest most point, the lowest point of our drawing. And if I'm going to use my fingers or pencils as measurement, you can see that this was a little bit longer than this palm area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure this, try to keep it the same, and then lower my finger a little bit. I'm just measuring this length or this height and then shifting it over and making a little bit longer. And you can also eyeball it. 1/2, 1/2. So make a little mark showing where the end of the hand is. And then the second row of knuckles, this row. For this knuckle, you can see how the lengths are starting to differ, right? This is different for everyone. But for this person's hand, the middle finger has the most length, so it drops down quite a lot. And quite nicely, this seems to be right in the middle between our first knuckle and the end that we just drew. Imagine this being half. So another place, a good place to put another mark. So now I know, oh, this is where my second row of knuckles is going to be. And then you're going to draw a little reference construction line, kind of like a curve, to show where the other knuckles are going to be. So all the other circles are going to start sitting on these lines. Okay, and then now I'm going to actually start, I usually start with the middlemost fingers, these two, when I draw the second row. No particular reason, I just feel that it makes the drawing feel more balanced. So now I'm drawing the second knuckle. It is about the same size, quite honestly. Like if you feel your own bones, you can kind of feel that it's about the same width. Just a little bit smaller. That was the second knuckle. Might make it a little bit lower. That. If you don't know where to put it, you can imagine a line going down the middle. So almost like dots and lines connect the dots. And then see how that the bone, they're not just going straight down, but they're actually curving inwards. So all the fingers are coming down together to a point. Okay, and then I'm going to start drawing my other knuckles. This one is a little bit higher than that one. Then the smallest knuckle on the far right. And this one's the index finger for this person's hand is on the same length or on the same level as the pinky. So these two are on the same height. Okay, and then now let's do the third row of knuckles. Why is it white? Okay. So the distance between the middle knuckles and the end of the hand can't be divided in half this time. Because for this person, you can see from this knuckle to the nail, that distance is quite short compared to this. For this, you can just eyeball it. There's no specific percentage. You just kind of get a feel for how far away it is. And then same as last time, you can start drawing the third row of knuckles. Going to start with the middle one, leaving a little bit of space for the nail. So another thing to keep in mind is how long the nail is going to be. Make sure you have enough length for the nails. I might move my line a little bit lower. The distance between the knuckles are also getting closer and closer, shorter. And this one's even hiding a little bit behind. So the pinky is very short. And this index finger knuckle is higher than the ring finger. Yeah, so that knuckle is a little bit higher. Usually, when we're drawing hands, uh, we draw them pretty quickly. And they don't have to be correct. It's just like it's just your drawing, right? So if you go fast, you get more used to the movement rather than the structure. So in your own time, if you're practicing this, you can actually go really quickly. So all of this, you could even get up to maybe like 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, and now let's get to the fun part before we even get to the thumb, because the thumb is a little bit funny. I usually put that last because it's hard to draw if you don't have all the other components. So let's begin tracing all of these or connecting these bones together with the flesh. I'm actually going to start at the top here. So I'm going to now draw this bump. Okay, starting here. Do you see this bone or this popped out part? Yeah, we're gonna just draw everything below that. So that's just the wrist bone, right? This little bump that sticks out. Just ignore that. And then now figure out where this starts to curve out. Mine starts about there. And then you're going to follow the shape you drew. It sticks out and then it curves down. Okay, when you get to this point, when you get to the knuckles, you're going to wrap around the knuckles, almost like you're smoothing out the edges, connecting the dots. Imagine how the skin would fold over or wrap around these bones. There's a little bump here, but it's not too dramatic. It just goes boop, down. You want it to kind of look like the bones are creating a little bit of tension underneath, like a balloon. Like if you're poking through a balloon, you can see your finger, right? Same concept. You want it to just slightly, a very subtle bump. And then when you get down here, drop your line below the third knuckle to draw the nail. So this. Okay, now let's draw the contour or the lines, the outline of the fourth finger here. And starting here, this is not, it's not a very, it's not a very sharp line until it gets down here. So this area is quite sharp. You can see where the line ends. But up here, it's a little bit more ambiguous. It's almost a softer shadow. So what you're going to do is just very lightly sketch the beginning of that knuckle. So I'm just wrapping around the knuckle here. Okay, and then this soft edge is going to taper down into the line. So now it is, as you get further down, the line becomes more crisp. So soft up here, and then when you get down, the line becomes sharp again. Keep wrapping around the knuckles. It kind of stops around here. Do the third finger, same thing. This one a little bit higher. So I'm just drawing the shadow, basically, that's wrapping around the knuckle. And then taper it. The line becomes sharp again. It kind of bends inwards. See here, this line, it doesn't fully come out like a straight line. It caves in a little bit. This is possibly due to two reasons. One, the flesh on this finger is pushing into that finger. So you have a curve that goes like this. So it's pushing in to this. And also, perhaps this finger, the skin, it's a little more sunken down, or the bones are so knobby that it doesn't, like, the flesh doesn't fill out on this side. So it's really just skin up here. So caves in, just note that. Wrap around, caves in again a little bit, and then bumps out on the third knuckle. You get to the nail, it's like a rounded shape at the bottom. But the nail is quite flat, the edge of the nail. Okay, for these two fingers or this line, there's not, the shadow becomes less and less dark, becomes lighter because of the light source. But you can't see anything too sharp here. But I do see where the fingers separate. So this crevice, that's where I'm going to start my line. And it's a little bit lower than the middle of the knuckles here. So somewhere about here. Just a little, this is where, you know, the fingers are separating. You can see that line starting right there. This one's a little bit interesting. The curve on this might not match the other ones. So it caves out a little bit instead of caving in. So it bends this way, like that way. Just a little bit. And it wraps around this knuckle. So if I zoom in a little bit, this line bends out, wraps around this one, and also a little bit around this one. It's a little hard to see, but this knuckle is pushing this line that way, and this knuckle is also pushing that line back to the left. It's almost like they're competing for line territory. And the wrap around this knuckle. And where does this finger end? It's almost on the same height, I would say. But it's a little bit higher than the ring finger. So I'm going to end it here. And the thickness of this finger is about the same as this one. So if you just look at this and then drag that same width over, you're going to have your finger. For this line on the left side, it doesn't wrap that much around the knuckles like this. You will not see this bend on this side unless there's not a lot of flesh in the fingers, because then the skin would sink and you would get a really dramatic line. If it's easier for you, you don't have to wrap upwards to draw the finger. You can start from the top again if that's easier for you. And then maybe meet in the middle. While we are here at the fingers, you can also draw the nails. The nails, the lines are the darkest near the cuticle. So the cuticle is where your nail starts popping out, and then where the skin becomes really thin. Basically, that's where the line of where the nail begins. So that usually is, it's different for each finger. So if you just compare the knuckle and the tip of that finger, and then maybe draw a line, and then you can see where that nail starts. It's a little bit taller than this distance. So draw a subtle curve, just a very, like a very, not too rounded, almost like a square with beveled edges. So this top part, the cuticle, is going to be a little bit darker. And the same down here. This one, it's not symmetrical. This top part, the right part, is a little bit higher. So it slants upwards, this nail. Okay, back to the nail. I'm going to draw it a little moon shape, and it straightens out. And just keep drawing the nails on this side. This one's a little flat because the finger, it has a natural bend. It's relaxed, so this ring finger goes in a little bit, almost like it's curling in. So that causes this nail to appear shorter. I would actually just make this whole finger for me. I don't know about you, but on my drawing, you can see that compared to the top of this nail, this finger is almost on the same line. So my finger was a little too long. Just shortened it, and now it's here. Then draw the nail for the pinky. It's the smallest one. It's also very thin, narrow. Okay, and as you can see, we are basically halfway through the hand. The only parts left are the thumb and then the wrist. So, which we don't really draw, but in this case we would, because it's also part of the hand. Okay, so let's move on to the thumb. We leave the thumb for last, or I leave the thumb for last. Not for any particular reason. It's just that the structure of it is different, so we can't use the same pattern of drawing for this one. There's only two knuckles, really, and also it's bent differently. And anatomically, it is on a different plane. See, all these fingers are together, and this thumb is just kind of there. So for the thumb, it's the digit that has the most range of motion, right? Because it's very free, and there's also muscles accompanying it. So it's your gripper. So starting here, I'm just going to, so this is the index finger. Starting at this knuckle, I'm just going to draw a very quick, light line wrapping around this palm area. We're just setting up the foundation, or setting the stage, I guess, for the thumb. And also, if you took a line and then drew it from the nail all the way up, it's almost a very straight line. So you can almost imagine an angle, or a line going at an angle, and that is where the thumb will start. Okay, for the thumb, same thing. You can draw the knuckles, but there are only two. And it's a little bit easier now because we have everything else laid out. Now we can use these as reference points for deciding where, how high to put the knuckles in the thumb. So with this one, so basically it's this little bump over here. This bump, we're gonna put it above, but not too much. If this is a circle for this knuckle, then this bump is really that much higher. So it's almost like a diagonal. And it's going to sit, half of it is inside the flesh, or inside this line, and then the other half on the outside. I would even make mine a little bit higher. And then the second knuckle down here. You almost get a triangle of sorts. So this one is a little bit below. And it's completely detached from the rest of the hand. So you can even place a little bit more outwards compared to this one, a little bit more to the left. And then you're going to landmark the bottom of the thumb. It is about the same height as this knuckle, but a little bit taller. This thumb. So about here. Okay, and then now the same thing that we did for this side or all the fingers, where we drew the line and wrapped around the knuckles, we're going to do the same for the thumb. So starting at this point, we're going to start drawing the flesh. So let me clean up some of these lines so you can see better. Okay, starting here, we're going to wrap around these knuckles here and down, wrap, and then it curves out. The nail curves out as well. So a soft bend into the first knuckle, this first one. So a soft bend. And the bends inwards to the next knuckle. And then wraps around this one. So you have a little bit of like a mountain. And then valley. When you get to the bottom, it curves out. Not too much. Really, it's just a straight line, but it looks like it curves out. Okay, and then when you're done, the left side, come back on the inside and draw the curve of the thumb. The thumb is thicker than you think it is. So actually, the thumb doesn't touch until this bump here. It doesn't touch the rest of the fingers. And you see this gap. There's a little bit of a gap there. Moon shape. And then it bends in. Okay. I'm going to move my knuckle on the index finger a little bit over, just so it covers more of that thumb on from this perspective. So it was here, and I'm going to shift it over a little bit. Not a huge change. And then once you're done the thumb, come back up to the top, and we're going to finish off the connection between the hand and the wrist. A little bit of that forearm, but we won't have to draw the rest of the arm. So back up top. It's not too much of dramatic. There's no dramatic lines or curves, but there's a slant. So over here, let's think of these as landmarks as well. There is a little bit of a bone here. This is from I forgot what bone it is, but it juts out here. So over here, there's also a little, this is probably a vein or an artery. It's probably a vein. Oh, let me show you. Can't see it. Okay, so up there, there's also a little bump. So you can think of these as landmarks. I'm just marking these out on the picture, but you can kind of think of connecting these different landmarks together with one sloping line. So this line goes in. This one wraps around. There's a little bone here. And the wrist is kind of moving not fully up, but when it's relaxed, it tilts a little bit to the right. Okay, so the wrist is thinner than your hand. One thing to fix a little bit on my drawing is that the tip of the thumb, it doesn't stick out as much as I thought it would. So I'm just going to erase this side. And I'm just going to bring it in a little bit more. Just because I noticed that we have to draw the nail. You can also do that as well. Please draw the thumb nail. And it's on the side now, so it's almost like a little triangle. Let me get rid of these lines. Okay, so the nail actually sticks out. It curves out. So this knuckle is obviously bending out, but the nail, it comes from the bone. So it actually goes straight out. So there's a little bend there. The skin wraps around the nail. Okay, and then the last step is now let's give this hand a little bit of shading. So we're going to color it in. Okay, before we shade, let's erase some of these construction lines. So this big circle, you can erase away these lines. Not all of it, just leave some of them so you can still see where the shape or where the shading is going to follow. So just erase this big one. And then erase the line going across all these knuckles. It's okay if you have any remaining like little lines here and there, because you're going to shade over it. You won't be able to see it anyways. And then definitely erase this thumb knuckle, the top one. Maybe also the rest of the thumb knuckle. And just clean up some of these edges. Okay, let's start with the shading. I'm going to start with the darkest areas. So all these black tones near black, you can't really see any definition. So that's why they're the darkest. And also up here. So this shadow, somewhere around the bottoms of the fingers where there's no light. A little bit up here between the upper knuckles. And then just a couple down here. We're just gonna work on them one by one. So I'm going to start with the thumb. It's almost like it's like the skin that wraps around the thumb or it goes over the thumb is creating a shadow. So starting here, I'm going to basically draw the fold of the flesh, the skin, and then trace the outside of that shadow. If you think that's good enough, fill it in dark. This will make more sense once you start adding the midtones. So those are the second darkest, or anything in the middle. You can also add a second little spike to show, that the skin is folding over itself. And then working my way down, still working in this area. You're going to draw the edge shadow for this knuckle. for the finger, this first finger. Okay, and then back to the thumb, there's a small shadow over here where the thumb is bending. So you have that shadow. It cuts inwards, but it still has a little curve to it. There's also a very tiny baby one on top of it. Okay, and then around the outside edge of the thumb, we have also an edge shadow. So down here, it starts dark on the edge and then it kind of fades into the thumb. So when you're out here, press hard and then slowly, softly let go. Go around the nail. And under the thumb as well, like a moon shape. And then fade it in as well. Now let's move on to the fingers. So starting on this side, there's not a lot of dark shadows, but you can just darken the edges. And then when you see some shift in value, like for example here, see how it's a little bit darker? You can also shade that lightly. It's also a little bit up here. This way it shows that the fingers are three-dimensional and have depth. Keep going around the finger. It's quite dark down here. but there's a little bit of separation between the nail and the tip of the finger. Between these two fingers, the line is not always the same darkness. So that means some of it, or even the same thickness. Over here, it gets a little bit thicker because it's darker, and also the depth, the crevice is deeper. That's why it's darker. So add a little bit of width to the line in different places. It's called line weight. So up here it's thin, then we go down a little bit thicker. Around the knuckles, there's a little bit of a shadow too. So all of these have, if you squint your eyes, you can see that obviously there's a shadow underneath the bone. And these are soft shadows. So you can take your pencil and lightly add some of those. Following the curve of the knuckles. Same on the other side. Also same on this finger as well, but I forgot. So anyways, let's go back here and also add a little bit of shadow, just wrapping around and under the knuckle bones. Give a little bit of an edge shadow at the bottom of the finger. And then continue to the right. So here we have a soft shadow. First, it wraps under this knuckle on the left. A soft shadow just wrapping under that bone there. Gets darker as it gets towards the center. Also the deepest part. So darkest in the middle, and as you get closer out, it fades. And the same on the right of that line, there's a little lighter shadow going to the right. And as you bring it down, make that shadow sharp again. Same down here, there's a little bit of that shadow underneath this knuckle as well. And there is quite a dark shadow underneath this knuckle here. So first, the knuckle itself has quite a sharp edge. So we're just going to draw a moon and then kind of just fill in that rest, going around the nail because the nail is lighter. Then coming back up to this knuckle here. Same thing with what we did. So the shadow is a little bit lower, but it's also still soft. Wraps around the knuckle. And then as you get lower, the line tapers. I'm going to make this one a little bit higher. Okay, and on the far right, we also have some of these shadows. Very lightly under the top knuckle, and then on the edge, fading in towards the middle of the finger. Under this knuckle, there is quite a dark shadow. Back to the thumb. So over here, I notice that there's also quite a soft dark shadow. It's not this dark, but it is still quite dark. So with your pencil, you can just slightly shade this entire area. You can also add a little bit of shadow in between here and here. So just basically the knuckles to accentuate the knuckles. Leaving the tops, the middle, white because that's the highlight. So basically shade around the highlight. And then when you have time, you can also add the texture. So by texture, I mean some of these skin folds and maybe these veins up here to make the hand feel more textured and realistic. So really quickly, I'll just show you how you can start the wrinkles on the knuckles. So what you do is you look for these really dark lines and draw those first. But they're not perfect lines. They're kind of crooked, like cracks. So add a line and make it a little bit dark somewhere, a little bit light somewhere, and then also the other lines around it. So just draw a bunch of lines, but avoid patterns. So if you draw the same line, the same place, same length, it will look more like a pattern rather than texture. Texture is more random and organic. So around that, you just shade, make some lighter lines, shade between the lines, and then you end up with these wrinkles. And that's how you would do the rest of them. So start with a few lines here and there randomly, curving in different directions, and then fill them in with shadows around the edges, between them. Some lines curving up, some short lines, maybe even some vertical lines. So just vary some of these lines, and that's how you get texture. Okay. Yeah, and then you would also draw them up here and also down here. All right. And that is all. I hope you had fun. Let's see if anyone is ready to share